With the presidential primaries and caucuses about to get underway in less than 2 weeks, more states are facing lawsuits challenging Donald Trump's eligibility to be on the ballot. At least 34 states have been asking the question of whether Trump's efforts to overturn his 2020 election loss, including his role in the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, make him ineligible to hold the presidency again. At least 20 of those challenges remain unresolved. 4 of them were filed just this week in Florida, Illinois, Virginia, and Massachusetts. Colorado and Maine are the only 2 states to have already kicked Trump off the primary ballot. Trump has appealed both decisions. His Colorado case is set to be the first to go to the Supreme Court. If or when the court takes up the case is yet to be seen, but it could come as early as tomorrow when the justices hold one of their regular meetings. And joining me now is Colorado Secretary of State Jena Griswold. Secretary Griswold, thank you for being here. Walk us through what happens and what the timeline looks like for you, because I understand that tomorrow is actually the deadline for you all to decide who's on the ballot. So how does what the Supreme Court does tomorrow impact Colorado?
Well, first off, always great to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
So tomorrow is the day I certify the ballot. So that's the day that I'll tell all the counties who can be on the ballots that they subsequently will print. But we have this big appeal in front of us. But before we get to the United States Supreme Court, the Colorado Supreme Court, while it did say that Donald Trump was disqualified and that he engaged in insurrection, it also said that if an appeal was filed, that he should be put back on the ballot. So tomorrow, if we don't hear anything from the United States Supreme Court, I will certify Trump's name on the ballot, and then we will wait to see whether the U.S. Supreme Court takes the case.
And if the Supreme Court then rules that he must come off of the ballot, would you then have to reprint all of the ballots? Because I know Colorado is a mail-in only state. Would you have to reprint them all?
So we're both in-person voting, but we have early in-person voting and, of course, election day in-person voting, vote by mail for all state. But actually, on top of that, overseas and military ballots will be sent out this month under federal law. So the answer to what happens in that situation really depends on the timing. We have had situations in Colorado where a candidate drops out of a race after their name is already on, or they somehow become disqualified. And I'll just make sure to read whatever ruling very closely and work with my team so that we have a great election in accordance with the law.
Let me go through some of the arguments that Donald Trump is making in his appeal. So here are their 2 main arguments. Number one is that Section 3 is inapplicable to the President of the United States because he is not an officer, takes a different oath, and that Donald Trump did not, in fact, engage in insurrection. What do you make of those arguments?
Well, Donald Trump wants to argue he didn't engage in insurrection. As you said in your prior segment, we all saw with our own eyes what happened on January 6th. We all witnessed what Donald Trump did prior to the insurrection and after and trying to steal the presidency. And on top of that, 2 courts have looked at this question and 2 courts have said he did indeed engage in insurrection.
They did indeed. Let me, including the Colorado Supreme Court, obviously, let me let you listen to Christina Bobb. And she's going to explain a little further their 14th Amendment argument. And she makes actually a rather stunning claim that I'd love to get your response to. Here's Christina Bobb.
The reason why it doesn't apply to the president was because the drafters of the 14th Amendment realized that the president is elected by the entire nation, and it should be the entire nation who determines who they want for president, whether they're guilty of insurrection or not. It's up to the people.
Whether they're guilty of insurrection or not, the people should be able to decide. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't want to go as far as to say she's making all of that up, but I would love to see her sources. I think it's pretty clear that there should not be some carve out in the Constitution for the presidency, especially when we're talking about a carve out that would bar insurrectionists from holding office again. We're in this situation that, I think it's hard for some to imagine. We are facing an election when someone who tried to steal this country, incited an insurrection that led to loss of life of police officers, could be reelected. So I very much disagree with her. But ultimately, it's up to the United States Supreme Court. The United States Supreme Court needs to give clarity to the American people whether someone who commits insurrection can hold the highest office in the land again.
Let me, what the 14th Amendment, Section 3 is very clear about is that members of Congress are officers of the court who took an oath and can be barred for insurrection. I'm just going to put up a non-exhaustive list of people who could be considered insurrectionists. These are the people who attended a December 21, 2020 White House meeting to overturn the election. Andy Biggs, Scott Perry, Mo Brooks, Louis Gohmert, Andy Harris, a bunch of them, Paul Gosar. And then there's Lauren Boebert, who I think a lot of people would also consider a supporter of insurrection. Are you surprised that more people, that no one has attempted to remove her, who's now switched districts in your state of Colorado, or other members of Congress, the same way they're attempting to remove Trump from these ballots?
We have seen some cases over the last year and a half attempting to remove candidates. And it has worked in the state of New Mexico, where actually I believe a county commissioner was removed. Yep. These cases require proving that someone engaged in insurrection. And what does that mean? I think with Donald Trump, it's pretty clear his intent, his actions to incite the insurrection. Other cases are not as clear. Some cases become moot if a candidate, doesn't win their primary or the general election. But I unfortunately believe that the use of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment may become a more commonplace thing, as we've seen the far right embrace trying to steal elections to hold on to power.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people would say if you're an insurrectionist, it's proper use, but we shall see what happens. Colorado Secretary of State Jena Griswold, thank you very much.